Kentucky. Just the name conjures up images. Rolling hills, powerful rivers, and those mountains. The rugged Appalachian Mountains run through the heart of Kentucky. They hold secrets, stories whispered on the wind. Folks were drawn to these mountains long ago. They came from faraway lands, seeking a fresh start. They were searching for freedom. They found it in the heart of Appalachia. These pioneers carved out a life in the wilderness. They built homes and communities. They made Kentucky their own. These early settlers faced hardship and danger, but they endured, their spirits unbroken. The mountains tested them, shaped them. Their legacy lives on in the echoes of the mountains. This is the story of Kentucky. The early settlers of Kentucky came from diverse backgrounds. They were Scots-Irish, English, German, and more. Each group brought their own traditions, their own stories, their own ways of life. They brought their music, their crafts, their beliefs. They wove them into the fabric of Kentucky culture. In the hollers of Appalachia, these cultures blended together. They created something new, something uniquely Kentuckian. The Scots-Irish brought their fiddle music, the English, their farming traditions, the Germans, their craftsmanship. All of these influences came together. They created a rich tapestry of culture. This blending of cultures is evident in every aspect of Kentucky life, from the food we eat to the music we play. It's in our stories, our accents, our way of life. Kentucky is a melting pot of cultures. Each one has left its mark. The early 1700s, a time of great change and upheaval. Europe was a cauldron of unrest. Wars, poverty, and religious persecution drove folks from their homes. They looked westward across the vast Atlantic to a new land, a land of promise, a land of opportunity. This land was America. Tales of boundless forests, fertile land, and the chance for a fresh start. They packed their meager belongings, bid farewell to their homelands, and boarded overcrowded ships. They embarked on a perilous journey across the sea. Many perished along the way, their dreams dashed upon the rocks of fate. But for those who survived, the sight of the American coastline brought a surge of hope. They had made it. Among these early pioneers, the Scots-Irish were a force to be reckoned with. They were a tough and independent people, shaped by generations of hardship and resilience. Driven from their homes in Ulster, Ireland, by religious persecution and economic hardship, they carried with them a fierce determination and a deep-seated love for their traditions. The mountains of Appalachia reminded them of their ancestral homeland. The rugged terrain and the spirit of independence resonated with their souls. They settled in the hollows and along the ridges, carving out a life in this new land. They brought with them their skills, their stories, and their music. The Scots-Irish were known for their strong work ethic and their self-reliance. Their influence on the development of Kentucky is undeniable. The English settlers brought their own distinct traditions to the lowlands and valleys of Kentucky. They were drawn by the promise of fertile land and the opportunity to establish a new life rooted in agriculture and commerce. They cleared forests, planted crops, and established homesteads, transforming the wilderness into a patchwork of fields and pastures. Their influence is still evident today in the rolling farmland that characterizes much of Kentucky's landscape. They brought with them a love of horses, a passion that would later flourish in the bluegrass region. The English settlers laid the foundation for a thriving agricultural economy and a system of governance that would shape Kentucky for generations to come. Along with the Scots-Irish and the English, a wave of German immigrants arrived in Kentucky, seeking religious freedom and economic opportunity. They brought with them a rich tradition of craftsmanship and a strong work ethic. They were skilled artisans, carpenters, and builders, renowned for their meticulous attention to detail and their ability to create durable and beautiful objects. They built sturdy homes and barns, crafted furniture that would last for generations, and established businesses that contributed to the growth of the local economy. The German settlers brought with them a love of music and dance, adding their unique traditions to the cultural tapestry of Kentucky. The legacy of the German settlers is evident in the enduring quality of their work and their lasting contributions to the cultural heritage of Kentucky. Let's talk about something as Kentucky as the mountains themselves, bourbon. This ain't just whiskey, folks. This is a story of ingenuity. It's about making something special from what you got. See, those early settlers, they had plenty of corn. The land, it just gave and gave. But hauling grain, that was a chore. Turning it into whiskey, well, that was just good sense. Easier to transport, lasted longer, and warmed a body on a cold mountain night. What started as a way to make use of a surplus, it became a craft. Traders, travelers, they all wanted a taste of Kentucky's spirit, a source of pride. Now, what makes Kentucky bourbon so darn special? Some say it's the limestone water. You see, our ground's full of it, filters the water, makes it pure, gives it a sweetness you won't find nowhere else. The water, it flows through the heart of the bourbon-making process. From the grain to the barrel, it's there every step of the way. They call it the limestone kiss. That moment when the water, filtered through ages of rock and time, meets the corn mash. It's like magic, folks. Transforms the ordinary into something extraordinary. Charred oak barrels give the bourbon its color, its smoothness, its character. Each barrel tells a story. It's the land, the water, the tradition, all mixed together with a whole lot of heart. As time went on, names like Elijah Craig, Evan Williams, they weren't just folks anymore. They were legends, pioneers who took that rough-around-the-edges moonshine and turned it into an art. They experimented, refined, passed down their knowledge from generation to generation. Distilleries sprung up, each with its own story to tell. Stone buildings, some standing since before the Civil War, silently witnessing the craft unfold within their walls. The smell of corn mash, the clang of barrels, the quiet whisper of aging spirits. It's a symphony of tradition. And it wasn't just about the making. It was about community. Farmers growing the corn, coopers crafting the barrels, families working side by side. Bourbon, it became the lifeblood of many a town, connecting folks to the land and to each other. It's Kentucky's legacy, carried on in every drop. So, next time you raise a glass of Kentucky bourbon, remember, you ain't just tasting a drink, you're tasting history. You're tasting the dedication of generations past. You're tasting the very soul of Kentucky. It's a spirit of resilience, of ingenuity, of doing things the right way, even when it's hard. That's the spirit of Kentucky bourbon. Now, let's talk about a creature as graceful as the summer breeze and as strong as the mountains themselves, the Kentucky Thoroughbred. Folks were bringing horses over from Europe almost as soon as they landed on these shores. Fine steeds they were, but something about Kentucky soil. It worked its magic. Maybe it's the bluegrass, rich and green, full of nutrients that make a horse's coat shine and its muscles ripple. Or maybe it's something in the water, just like with our bourbon. These horses, they weren't just work animals, they were companions, partners, a source of pride. Folks would gather on Sundays after church, race their fastest steeds down dusty lanes. Friendly competition it was, but you could see the fire in their eyes. Now, raising a thoroughbred, it ain't for the faint of heart. It takes dedication, knowledge passed down through generations. From the moment a foal takes its first wobbly steps, it's all about care and attention. The land plays a part, of course. Those rolling pastures of bluegrass, they're like a gourmet buffet for a horse. But it's the people, the breeders, the trainers, who make all the difference. They study bloodlines, trace back generations to find those perfect pairings. It's a partnership built on respect and trust. And then there's the Kentucky Derby, the pinnacle of horse racing held right here in our own backyard. Folks from all walks of life, dressed in their finest attire, gather at Churchill Downs on that first Saturday in May. The air crackles with anticipation. The horses, they're practically vibrating with energy, their coats gleaming under the sun. And when that starting gate bursts open, it's like the whole world holds its breath. The thunder of hooves, the roar of the crowd, it's an experience like no other. For those 2 minutes, nothing else matters but the horses, the jockeys, and the thrill of the race. But the Kentucky Derby, it's more than just a race. It's a celebration of our heritage, a testament to our love affair with the horse. It's a time when the world turns its eyes to Kentucky and we show them what we're made of. It's about tradition, family, and the bonds that unite us. It's about the beauty and grace of these magnificent animals and the dedication of the people who raise and care for them. So the next time you see a Kentucky Thoroughbred, whether it's grazing peacefully in a field or thundering down a racetrack, take a moment to appreciate the legacy it represents. It's a legacy of passion, dedication, and the enduring spirit of Kentucky. Now, while those horses grazed above, something else was happening deep beneath our feet. A story of grit, of hardship, of a different kind of Kentucky spirit. The story of coal. Beneath those rolling hills lay veins of black gold. Coal fueled the nation, powered the factories that built America. For many Kentuckians, it was a way of life. Miners, tough as nails, descended into darkness each day. The air thick with coal dust, tunnels narrow and treacherous. They went down, day after day, providing for their families. The mountains held treasure and danger. Cave-ins, explosions, black lung disease. The risks were ever present. But miners faced those risks head-on. It was a brotherhood, forged in sweat and danger. Life in a coal camp, it wasn't easy. Families living in company houses, everything owned by the coal company. But there was a sense of community, a bond that went beyond the mines. Folks looked out for each other, shared what little they had. After a hard day's work, the miners would gather. On porches, in union halls, the sound of banjos and guitars would fill the air. They sang songs of hardship, of hope, of the life they knew. Music, it was their release, their way of making sense of the world. And the women, they were the backbone of those communities. They kept the homes, raised the children, worried about their husbands and fathers down in the mines. They tended to the sick, offered comfort in times of need, and held their families together through thick and thin. Coal mining, it wasn't just a job, it was a way of life that shaped generations of Kentuckians. It taught them resilience, hard work, and the importance of sticking together. It's a legacy etched into the very fabric of our state. But times change, and so did the coal industry. Machines replaced men, mines closed down, and communities that once thrived on coal were left struggling to find their footing. The mountains, once a source of livelihood, became a symbol of lost opportunity for some. It was a difficult transition, one that continues to this day. But through it all, the spirit of the Kentucky coal miner, that spirit of resilience and determination, it never faded. We're a resourceful people, we Kentuckians. We adapt, we find new ways to thrive. We're investing in education, in new industries, in renewable energy sources like wind and solar. We're looking to the future while honoring the sacrifices of those who came before us. The mountains, they've seen it all. From the boom times of coal to the challenges of today, they stand as silent witnesses to our history. They remind us that change is inevitable. But the spirit of Kentucky, that spirit of resilience and hope, It never fades. We're writing a new chapter in Kentucky's story now. One that embraces progress while holding on to the values that define us. Hard work, ingenuity, a deep connection to the land and to each other. We're looking to a future where our children and grandchildren can build good lives for themselves right here in the hills and hollers we call home, where the echoes of our past, the stories of miners, farmers, and horsemen will inspire generations to come. We're Kentucky. We're bourbon and bluegrass, coal dust and horsehair. We're the echoes of the Appalachians, and our story is far from over. We're strong, we're resilient, and we're moving forward together. Now, while those miners were toiling underground, another story was unfolding under the Kentucky sun. A story of sweat, of toil, of the land providing for its people. This is the story of Kentucky agriculture. From the get-go, folks knew this land was fertile. The soil, rich and dark, was just begging for a seed. And so they planted. Corn for sustenance, vegetables for the table, and a crop that would become as much a part of Kentucky's identity as the mountains themselves, tobacco. But it wasn't just about filling their own plates. These farmers, they had a knack for growing things. They understood the land, knew when to plant, when to harvest, how to coax the best out of every acre. And soon, word spread beyond those hills. Kentucky crops, they were something special. From the fertile Ohio River Valley to the foothills of Appalachia, the land was a patchwork of green and gold, a testament to the hard work of those who tilled the soil. Now, tobacco, it was more than just a crop. It was king. For generations, it ruled these parts, shaped the economy, the culture, the very rhythm of life in rural Kentucky. Farmers, they'd spend their days tending those fields, planting, hoeing, toppling, cutting. It was back-breaking work. And when those leaves were harvested, hung in barns to cure, the air would be thick with the sweet, pungent aroma of tobacco. Whole families, they'd work together. Women and children, too, helping with the harvest, stringing those leaves, preparing them for market. It was a way of life passed down through generations. And on auction day, when those warehouses were filled with buyers from all over, the energy was electric. The fast-talking auctioneers, the smell of tobacco hanging heavy in the air, the sound of bids being called out. It was a sight to behold. But it wasn't all about tobacco. Kentucky, it's always been a land of livestock, too. Horses, of course, but also cattle grazing on those hillsides, their bells echoing through the valleys. Sheep and hogs, they thrived in these parts, too. Farmers, they knew how to use every inch of land, adapting their practices to the lay of the land. In the hollers, they raised hogs. On the steeper slopes, sheep grazed. And in those fertile valleys, cattle fattened up for market. And let's not forget the chickens, scratching in the dirt, providing fresh eggs for breakfast. Or the gardens, bursting with tomatoes, beans, and squash, enough to feed a family through the winter. Kentucky agriculture, it was about diversity, about using what you had, making the most of the land, and providing for your family and your community. Kentucky agriculture has seen its share of change. The reign of King Tobacco, it ain't what it used to be. Health concerns, changing tastes, they all took their toll. But Kentucky farmers, they're a resilient bunch. They've adapted, diversified, found new ways to make a living from the land. Some turn back to traditional crops, growing heirloom varieties. Others raise organic produce for healthier options. And some find new uses for old tobacco barns, turning them into event spaces, art studios, even breweries. In Kentucky, we know how to take something old and make it new again. We may not be the tobacco capital anymore, but Kentucky agriculture is still strong. It's in our blood. That connection to the land, that determination to make something of it. It's a legacy passed down through generations. These mountains ain't just rock and dirt. They separate communities, creating unique cultures. Each holler has its own way of saying things, passed down through generations. It's a language born of isolation and intimacy, connecting hearts and souls. Now some folks, they might call it slang, backwoods talk. But to us, it's poetry. It's the language of our grandparents whispering in our ears, the language of the mountains themselves. You see, back in the day, before roads and cars and telephones, folks walked. They walked for miles, over mountains and through hollers, to visit kin, to court, to trade news and stories. And along the way, they carried their words with them, like precious cargo. And just like those mountain paths, our language, it took on the shape of the land. It twisted and turned, rose and fell, just like the terrain itself. It became as rugged and as beautiful as the place it came from. So, next time you hear a Kentuckian talking, don't just listen to the words themselves. Listen for the rhythm, the melody, the echoes of generations past. You just might hear something special, something that speaks to the very soul of this place. And speaking of music, well, that's a whole other story. Music, it runs through our veins like the very water that flows through these hills. It's in our blood, passed down from generation to generation, a language all its own. From the mournful wail of a fiddle to the toe-tapping rhythm of a banjo, our music tells the story of our people. It speaks of hardship and heartbreak, of love and loss, of the joys and sorrows that come with living close to the land. You see, music, it was our entertainment, our therapy, our way of connecting with something bigger than ourselves. On a Saturday night, folks would gather from miles around, drawn by the sound of a fiddle cutting through the night air. They danced till dawn, their feet moving to the music like they had a mind of their own. It was a way of letting go, of forgetting their troubles, of celebrating life in all its messy glory. But it wasn't just music that filled those long mountain nights. Womenfolk, they were known for their crafts. Quilting in particular became an art form. Pieces of fabric, scraps of old dresses and shirts, transformed into works of art. Each quilt, it told a story. Geometric patterns passed down through generations. Each stitch a testament to the patience and skill of the quilter. Warmth for cold nights, yes, but also a legacy. A tangible connection to the women who came before. And let's not forget about woodworking. Men, they whittled and carved, turning wood into everything from toys for their children to furniture that would last for generations. Each piece imbued with the spirit of the maker, the grain of the wood telling its own silent story. These crafts, they weren't just hobbies. They were a way of life, a way of expressing yourself, of leaving your mark on the world, and they're still going strong today. Passed down from grandmothers to granddaughters, fathers to sons, keeping those traditions alive. Kentucky's history ain't always been pretty, brother against brother, blood staining this sacred ground. It's part of who we are, like the mountains and rivers. The Hatfield-McCoy feud, a legend whispered round these parts. Two families divided by a river and bad blood. Their feud, a tangle of revenge and loyalty. It cost lives and left scars that linger. And then there was the Civil War. Kentucky, caught in the middle of a divided nation. Families torn, neighbor fighting neighbor, brother against brother, father against son. Battles like Perryville marked our land. The echoes of muskets and cannons still rumble through these hills. But even in the darkest of times, even when it seemed like hope was lost, the spirit of Kentucky, it endured. It's a spirit of resilience, of picking yourself up after a fall and dusting yourself off. It's about looking out for your neighbor, lending a hand when times are tough. You see it in the faces of the coal miners. Their bodies weary, but their spirits unbroken. You hear it in the music that fills our hollers, the songs of hardship and hope, of love and loss, that have been passed down for generations. It's in the way we gather round a table, sharing a meal and a story. The bonds of family and community holding us together. It's in the pride we take in our horses, those magnificent creatures that embody our own spirit of grace and strength. And it's in the way we raise a glass of bourbon, that amber liquid, a testament to our ingenuity, our ability to take something simple and turn it into something special. Kentucky, it ain't perfect. We got our flaws, our struggles, our ghosts of the past, but through it all we persevere. We endure. We find a way to laugh, to love, to live, because that's the spirit of Kentucky, a spirit forged in the fires of hardship, tempered by the love of family and community, and sustained by the beauty and bounty of this land we call home. And that, my friends, is a legacy worth fighting for, a legacy that will endure for generations to come, a legacy that echoes through these mountains, strong and true, forever Kentucky.